Welcome to the next podcast from Millinery.Info. I'm your host, Lauren Ritchie. It's so wonderful to have you joining me for this episode of Millinery.Info. In this series, we've been welcoming leaders in the millinery world from across the globe into your ears and studio. I hope you've been enjoying this series, and if you've just joined us, feel free to flick back in your feed and listen to the wonderful repertoire we already have for you. For this episode, we welcome Monika Neuhauser, a milliner based in New Zealand, to the podcast episode. I'd like to take a moment to say thank you to our wonderful Patreon podcast sponsors for their support. Hatblocks Australia, Louise McDonald Milliner, House of Adorn, The Hat Magazine, Hatter's Millinery Supplies, Lifted Millinery, Be Unique Millinery, Judith M. Millinery Supply House, Hats by Lico, Hat Academy, and Millinery Australia. If you'd like to check out any of these businesses, please see the show notes for a link to their websites. Thank you so much for listening to this episode today. I'd like to invite you to take a moment to head onto our Patreon page. There's a link here in our show notes or on the website. You can sign up to become a Patreon supporter of the podcast. It's a small way to say thank you if you've been enjoying this content. On this page, you'll also find the new downloadable files. These include a style sheet, a photo shoot running schedule, and a client order form. These are templates that you can download and use in your business. I hope you enjoy these new resources. You can also check out the new library of millinery books on our website. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode, and I hope you enjoy the discussion with Monika. Thank you so much for joining me, Monika. It is wonderful to be able to talk hats with you. I've long been an admirer of your work and thought it was time that we got to hear from the amazing milliner herself. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. And flattery will get you nowhere.
Could you share with us about how you came to millinery? What was your first introduction?
Well, I mean, first of all, I am Austrian. So I moved here to New Zealand in 1988. So just to, explain the accent and the name and all that sort of thing. I was first introduced to millinery as such, hats or racing anyway. That's how I came to it, through a friend. And she just said one day, oh, let's go to the races. And I said, oh, okay, right. Well, not knowing, because racing is not a thing in Austria. There's a little bit of harness racing, I think. But other than that, there's, and it's not a thing really. She said, well, put on a nice dress and hat or a fascinator or whatever. And I go, okay, right. And Googled, to find out what is appropriate. And of course, there are no shops at all in New Zealand, really, where you can buy anything or could then. So more Googling and then a trip to Spotlight. And then I bought a few things and nailed them together. And that's how I attended my first race day. I just had people say, oh, where did you get that? And da-da-da-da-da. And as with so many of us milliners, that's how it started. And then you go like, oh, this is fun. And I make one for my friend and then for a friend of a friend. And that's how it started. Yeah.
Were you doing creative things and making before?
Yes. I mean, obviously with my generation also growing up, we learned everything at school. You had like the sewing and crocheting and knitting and embroidery, we learned all that, even though I didn't particularly like it, really. Never finished anything. I don't think I finished, maybe I finished one or two things, but, I wasn't particularly disciplined with it. But as I got older, I got more interested in things, and then I had children, and I started sewing for my little girl, and I was knitting, jumpers and things like that. So I was definitely more interested in making That's when it started out. Yeah.
Amazing. And from that first headpiece, we'll call it,
Yes.
did you think this is something that's possible, or what happened next?
Oh, it became a bit of a, just making things like any other things I made before, and if I didn't have enough time or couldn't do anything with the children, I was shifting furniture, things like that. So there's always been an urge to create something. Um, and it just snowballed sort of, became more interested. And because of my connection with my girlfriend, um, I got into it, and just through Google, found out what you can do. Had shit materials. Obviously, you can't buy anything in New Zealand, so
No suppliers.
oh, no. So I started off basically with, I think, even like florist cinema and things like that, no skills, no materials. So a hot glue gun. Um, but then as I became more interested in it, I also, my sort of Austrian soul searched for, like, how do you do this properly? How do you really do this? Like, this is a profession and there's a skill to it. Funny enough, when I was 14 years old, we had at school, we had career counseling.
Yes.
And it was suggested to me to become a milliner. And I thought, what? What? Like, and I had no idea what a milliner was, what that would be. So they sent me off to a workroom, and I could spend 2 days there. I don't think, it was boring as hell. So I thought, no, this is not for me, and left this. And then, lo and behold, 30 years later or whatever, I came into millinery and stumbled over it, and yeah.
I'm curious, after it, what was the in between? If you didn't go on to be a milliner in your first career, what was your first career?
I worked. I was medically interested, and I actually ended up being a dental chairside assistant, which I absolutely loved. And I only stopped that, when then we came to New Zealand and then had children and so on. And then I worked my husband is an optician, so I worked in optics also for a few years, which I also loved. Has a little bit, a little bit of the fashion side to it.
Yes.
And then I started, came into millinery, and it started out as a hobby, and whatever. And yeah, and then one day, our branch that I worked in was sort of sold to a bigger company, and it was closed off. And then I thought, this is my cue. I'm out of here and I'm going to be a milliner.
That career counselor was right.
Yes, yes. In the end, it's funny how life works out, isn't it? Really.
What a journey.
Yes, yes. And to have to move to the other side of the world to actually do it, I always say I don't think I would do it if I were in Austria. It's very boring over there. They are very jealous of us. Because it's all just, a little bit more like there's felt hats, very traditional.
Yes.
But there's nothing like race wear or even wedding hats, very rarely. And yeah, so feel
So
sorry
from
for
the
them.
Yeah, it's far more exciting in the hat world over here.
Oh, definitely, definitely, yes.
From your florist cinema, when did you get your hands on? I'm not going to call it real millinery material, isn't the right word, but when did
Yes,
you?
yeah, yeah. Well, I was searching for how do I evolve? How do I, get into this? And then I found Hat Academy. And that I was so grateful, it's like at last I could actually watch things how things are done and techniques and materials. And then, of course, came across the Australian suppliers and da 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 da. So yeah, that's when I started, buying things online and work with millinery materials and made the first things sort of, with the right techniques and things like that. Yeah. And from that, that helped me, quite a bit. And then came Wagga.
Yes, Wagga.
Yes. And that was, I thought, oh, and I oohed and ahhed, and should I really, the expense and da 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 da. And my husband said, yeah, of course you're flying, of course you're going. So off I went to Wagga.
Yes.
And that triggered a life-changing meeting with Waltraud Reiner.
Of course.
Yeah. So, somehow over Facebook, we sort of, and over Facebook, she said, oh, you're coming over, I have a house rented in Wagga while I'm there. You can stay in the house if you want, we are a bunch of people, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I did. I joined that, house. I went to Melbourne, stayed at her house for a night. Then we went to Wagga. We actually grew up about 30 kilometers apart in Austria.
That's amazing.
So, we had this instant connection, of course, of a cultural background, a language.
Yes.
And yeah, it was, I'm so, yeah, it was fated, I think, we've become best friends. She has become my amazing mentor and tutor. I always say everything I know about millinery, I know from her. She's got this, she's Yoda, really. she's the Yoda of millinery. Whenever I have a question or I get stuck, I call Waltraud. We talk about once a week.
Amazing.
And she has the answers to everything. So yes, the Wagga was life-changing. Yes.
That's amazing.
Mm.
And it wouldn't even, to make those connections, it was a convention to be in that space and learn from everyone around. And the classes, was that the first in-person millinery classes you've taken?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And that showed me from there on, I actually continued to come. I went to Waltraud's winter school and summer school, and I still do that every year. Summer school, not winter school so much, because I've gotten into the habit of going to Europe for 2 months every winter.
That sounds wonderful.
Yes. So yes, I still go over, for summer school. She comes now over for spring school in New Zealand in my studio. So the learning continues and will never stop.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, I'm very, very grateful to have her in my life, for sure.
When did you have your first client? And what was that experience like?
Honestly, I can't remember. Maybe it was, when I started making things for friends of my girlfriend, when they, I think that's when I started off and then started charging, a little bit, whatever, sort of skill appropriate. I wouldn't time to call myself a milliner. Just because I knew, my skills were not where I wanted them to be or where they could be, so I always say, oh yeah, I make hats. I never said I'm a milliner. I can't quite remember when that started, when I had the feeling, okay, now I know what I'm sort of, doing sometimes, most of the time. And now I'm a sort of a milliner, yes.
So what was your first block and where did that come from?
Oh, my first block. probably was just a normal utility block, to be honest, that I just bought like online, on Trade Me, or that sometimes Trade Me is our sort of Gumtree
Oh,
thing
yes.
here in New Zealand. That's probably my first block here. It has grown quite a bit since then. I have brought home blocks from Vienna. I have bought blocks online. And for a while, my husband got into wood turning. So I had him make things that could be turned, not
Yes.
carved,
Yeah.
but just basic turned blocks. He made quite a bit for me as well. So yeah, I've got quite a good selection now. Never enough, of course.
No, never enough. Never enough.
Hmm.
Do you create a collection, or how do you work with your clients to create their pieces?
Um, I don't do, I mean, I wouldn't call them collections. I just make things I want to make, and I think, will sell as ready weight, but the majority of what I do is actually bespoke. That's true. And people just contacted me either when it's racing or weddings. They have an outfit, and then I do prefer to meet people in person, because you get a bit of a better feel of what they like. They get to try on things, and they see where they're comfortable, where they you know it's a sort of a it's a little bit of a psychological thing sometimes. I almost find, especially for not so much the racing people, but the wedding, mother of the bride, mother of the groom, because a lot of them are not used to wearing hats. So, when they come, they actually have no idea what they want or might want, and it's the old, oh, I don't suit hats, I don't know what to wear. And so it's a little bit, it brings me back to my time as in the optical world, when people get their first glass. Yes, yeah, I think it's quite similar. People don't, they're not used to seeing themselves with glasses or with a hat. So it's a bit of a, you just try on things. That's the only way to find out. And when you observe people, you sort of know when they feel comfortable and they feel like, oh, yes, I can wear this, oh, that's not as bad as I thought. Or you see their face, they light up a little bit and go like, whoa, I love this. Oh, that makes me feel really good. So yeah. So you're a little bit of a psychologist as well.
Absolutely.
And also
And
helping them, finding their confidence.
absolutely. Are
Yeah.
these weddings that are happening locally in New Zealand, or are they heading overseas for the events, the weddings?
Actually, both.
When they come into the studio, do you have styles made up that they try on, or how do you work that?
Yes. I mean, I have a selection of, at the moment I have here probably 20 hats, to just, and you can just play around a bit and try on, and try and guide them sometimes a little bit, um, and point out why that hat doesn't. I'm actually brutally honest, and I was like that when I worked in optics. I would put something on somebody and take it off, and he says, "No, not for you."
No, no.
So they sort of, they know I would not push anything that wouldn't work for them. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I guess
Mm.
that's part of the relationship building of this is your area of expertise and they're coming to you for a reason. So it's
Yes, yeah, yeah. And
trust
you
building.
also, and you have to feel around, even though I might think this hat looks amazing, but there's this reluctance, and you can't push them. You just have to step back a little bit, maybe revisit it later, or you say, okay, you're not there. We have to come, find something a little bit easier.
And you're speaking to me from your studio space. When did you start working in a studio, and could you tell us a bit about that?
Well, I'm very fortunate actually because we had this building as it's a garage and
Yes.
a guest house. Because, being from overseas, we get visitors who stay longer. So we thought it's a good idea to have a space where they can just, retreat. We have our space, they have their space. So there was it's quite big really, and it's got a bedroom and a bathroom, blah, blah, blah. But I've taken over.
You've taken over.
Yes, so I started off in a little corner.
Yes.
And now I am basically occupying the majority of it. We still have the bedroom available when we have guests, and I take my things out. I've obviously also got the garage for storage, so but I'm very lucky to be able to work from home, but not in the home. And it's also nicer for clients to come here because it actually looks like a professional setup. I've got a little showroom, where we discuss and then I've got obviously the big workroom, and so my commute is about 30 seconds.
How fantastic.
So yes, that's nice because I can come and leave as I please, Sometimes when you have you are in the creative process and you need to step away, and then I go and visit the chickens or I hop into the pool, So I'm quite blessed, really.
So wonderful.
Mm.
And will most people come into the studio space, or do you work with people remotely as well?
Both really, yes. I prefer when they come here, and some of them are actually willing to travel quite a bit, simply due to the fact that milliners are a very rare breed in New Zealand, very few. So people sort of look, they look online, where is somebody and so on. So they are prepared to travel up to 4 hours. Actually, I had somebody. But otherwise, yes, it's online, and just email or whatever, social media, and then sending pictures back and forth. They often will send me the dress or fabric, so I know. So yeah.
Fantastic. And you've created some stunning pieces that I've seen, particularly at the Melbourne Cup Carnival Fashions on the field. There's an amazing collective of very stylish women and men that come across from New Zealand to partake in the VRC competition.
Yes, yeah.
The one that comes to mind for me most recently in the white.
Eleanor Campbell.
What a piece. Is that something? What makes a winning piece?
A winning piece is when the whole outfit sings. That's a winning piece. A good hat can make an outfit. A bad hat can break an outfit, but it's never just one thing. It has to be the combination of everything, And she is very, very good in. She knows what suits her. She knows what she likes. Her mother was one of my first clients, really, and that goes back to 2013, or I can't even remember. But there's Anna and her two daughters. Her Claudia, her older daughter, she won the fashions, the big fashions in New Zealand.
Yes.
Many years ago, and then of course now Eleanor, she's won the big one, the Oscar, which was very exciting. Eleanor also won the Dubai style stakes a few years ago. I think it's 5 years ago she won that one.
And one of your beautiful pieces.
Yes, yeah. I've made hats for them. We joke around because we said, one day there will be the Campbell collection in a museum or something. She says there's a room full of hats and it spills out onto the hallway.
Some beautiful pieces, I imagine, are in this collection.
Oh gosh, yes, so many. I've probably forgotten most of them really, but yeah.
Do you keep a record of what you've created for everyone, or you make and then it's out the door?
I I should, but I don't. Yeah, I mean, obviously, social media helps because I go back and say, oh yeah, I remember this one, and I remember. But a lot of them, is like wedding hats and things like that. I don't necessarily keep a record. No, it's done, dusted, out the door, and yeah.
What have been some, besides those, like that's a very external kind of visual of successes of the pieces you've made, but what have been some of your personal highlights in your career so far?
My personal highlights. I mean, obviously, Dubai is great and Melbourne is great, and I worked. I think it was before COVID, just at the break. I worked with a theatre company in Auckland and made hats for. They had the importance of being earnest, and then they did the Alice in Wonderland, and that was so much fun. I loved that. Absolutely loved making an enormous top hat for the Mad Hatter with a little top hat underneath, so he took the big off and there was or the Duchess, Miss the King and the Queen. That was so much fun. I wish I would do more theater work actually. I loved that part of the research and obviously the period pieces, and yeah, that was really good fun.
Have you done many other theatre projects?
No, sadly, because then COVID came. They had big plans of doing My Fair Lady and whatever. And then COVID came, and I think it killed them, unfortunately. So, but who knows? Maybe something else comes along at some point.
Put some theatre vibes out there.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, we're having a big theater built in Hamilton at the moment. So who knows? Maybe something will eventuate. I don't know.
Being a small business working from home, what are some of the blessings and some of the challenges?
I think it's all blessings, really. I don't feel any challenges. The thing is, I am actually naturally a introvert. So I'm very, very comfortable being on my own. I can go out, like I don't go to many race meetings as such. I go to our local one, and then I go to Ellerslie, once or twice a year. And I can have a social day out, but I find it quite draining.
Yes.
This is my happy place, really. I always say I'm never lonely. I like being alone, and it also, I think it's good for. I mean, sometimes I get together with Belinda Green.
Yes.
She's a mom of four young girls, and she hasn't got a lot of time to do millinery. She hires out.
Yes.
So every now and then she escapes, and we have a weekend here, and that is just lovely to share that with somebody like-minded.
Yes.
But for my own like creative space and process, I like being alone and not being interrupted, and being able to pull out things and go berserk and then go quiet again. So now for me, it's actually all blessings, really. The way I work here and what I do is brilliant.
Do you have much of a structure to your week? Because with running businesses comes the admin side and the making side. And I found myself the other day just going, I just need a day to make, because I could spend all day just doing the little quick things on my computer. What do you do? How do you work that balance? Well, there's no balance. There's no right answer.
No, actually, it doesn't really sort of apply to me. I mean, my husband and I, we are sort of in a business partnership. So all the bookwork and so on, that's already taken care of. for me, which is brilliant. So I really only need to look after, having clients, making things, selling things. Yeah,
It's a
I mean,
wonderful partnership.
I won the lottery as such. And then, just make hats all year round, basically, and then escape to Europe for 2 months.
Oh, do you go,
To
I say home, that's not probably the right term. Do you go back to Austria when you travel?
Yes, yeah. And it is still home because we have all our family over there, of course. And now we have through, like my son's partner who is from Paris, I also have family in Paris. How convenient.
Oh no, you just have to go to Paris.
Yes, yeah, I went there last year and it was wonderful. I actually went to, that really old shop in Paris, Mode. Is it Mode?
Ultramod.
Ultra Mode, yes. So I had a little, was very cute there. I mean, not a lot of millinery materials. I think, Australia sort of, you're quite spoiled when it comes to that. But it was
Absolutely
nice
are.
to just see it and visit it. And yeah, in the end, I bought two colors of Petersham. That's all I bought as a souvenir.
But it's a beautiful space and such a unique little shop because it's split
Oh,
across the street. Funny
exactly,
little.
yeah. And the other one is really like stepping back in time. It's so, yeah, it's very cute. It's like a museum, really.
Coming up on your workbench or your project list that you're looking forward to working on?
What have I got on my workbench? I have got a couple of pieces that go to the Kentucky Derby. I have something for like a horsey in-hand showing person. And then I have just a few things that I just, I'm very much, I'm inspired by materials. I work quite a bit with fabric because I like the technical side of building something. That's sort of from my I like doing that, just making a foundation, putting something over it, combining it with something, and the stitching itself, I find quite it's just very soothing and very, and watch Netflix next to it or listen to it, that sort of thing. So yeah.
How do you start that creative process? What comes first?
Well, sometimes it's a head block, that I just put my eyes on. I think, oh, I quite like that. Or I just go through all my fabrics and things, and something jumps out. And I thought, oh, that could be nice. So I'm not a planner at all. I wish I was. I wish I could sit and sketch something and then, I'm not like that. No. My creative process now, it's not a planned, it just happens. It's not a planned thing at all. Unpredictable. I also have a big box of unfinished projects. Where you think you do something and then it doesn't really progress, and then yeah. But sometimes they get revisited years later.
I was going to ask you, do you come back to them?
Yes, yeah, you do, yeah. And then suddenly go like, now I know.
That's what you're meant to be doing instead.
Yes, exactly.
It has been so wonderful to get to talk hats with you, Monika. Thank you so much for giving me an insight into your workspace and to share your story with us. It's been fantastic.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining me for this episode. I hope you enjoyed hearing Monika's story. Thank you to our wonderful Patreon podcast sponsors for their support. Hat Academy, Millinery Australia, Hatters Millinery Supplies, House of Adorn, Judith M. Millinery Supply House, Hats by Lico, Be Unique Millinery, Lifted Millinery, Louise McDonald Milliner, The Hat Magazine, and Hat Blocks Australia. You can find a link to these businesses in our show notes and in your podcast app. If you'd like to hear your name mentioned here, head on over to our Patreon page to sign up to become a podcast sponsor, or you can sign up as a silent thank you as the two other tiers we have. I'm your host, Lauren Ritchie. It's been so wonderful to be talking hats with you for this episode, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.